everybody, and it's a pleasure to join back again. Last year, we were here in the same place, not the same place, the same stage, and with a totally different set of panelists this time, and thanks a lot for all the panelists, respected panelists, to come in from different locations, flying in and share their perspective. This is going to be exciting because, and I'm sure you guys have a lot of questions around it, reskilling, shaping up, it's going to be a big challenge also, and also an opportunity for all of us. And we're all, I think, contributing. I'll give you a little bit of background, and I think I'll pass over and listen to the experts. That's the most important thing today. I think you've already seen the IT staffing. I think the report is fantastic. Suchita, great work done. Look at the IT industry, 8% growth as per NASSCOM. And it's about $154 billion industry. We are about 3.04, and Ritu said it's conservative. I also agree, it's conservative growth for all of us. $5 billion industry by 5.32 by 2021. That means a 57% growth. That means a 14% growth YOY. Adds about 32,000 people every year from IT staffing point of view. So that's a good news for all the IT staffing players here. And also from the perspective of looking at India's workforce. We had a target of training 100 million folks in India, by 2022 as a government. And why, so why we did 100 million? We need 100 million new people to join in the workforce by 2022. Government said we're going to be putting in 12,000 crores of investment, and we'll train 400 million people in 24 sectors, right? Is that enough? I don't think so. I think, look at the industry today, both on the entry level as well as in the senior level, mid-level, you have challenges of finding the right kind of talent. I'll give you some reports on what the Indian companies as compared to other countries are. One of our reports, and one of our very big reports says that only 4.69% of the total workforce in India is into formal training, gone through formal training in India actually, as compared to if you look at 68% in the UK, formal workforce goes through training and skilling. 75% in Germany, 52% in the US, and 80% in Japan, 96% in South Korea. Imagine where we are today. It's a great opportunity, as well as obviously we need a lot of efforts to upskill and formally train our employees in the workforce. That's the most important thing. I will also talk about the reskilling. Why is it important? And why the disruption plays an important part in reskilling. Every day there's new disruption required. Average unemployment of fresh engineers, if you look at 5.2 million unemployed engineers as per AICT in the last 4 years, continues to grow at entry level. This is big number actually, 5.2. These are social bombs being created in the industry. Talent ups, if you look at talent refresh, everybody is thinking, I can get a job done from an entry-level or a mid-level resource. Why do I need a 25-year, 30-year experienced guy? So talent refresh cycle is going on in the industry. That's true. And there are people going to be losing jobs in the upward 10 years plus of experience. So what do we do? Do we kind of dishearten ourselves? No. This is going to be throwing up a liquid workforce model in India. What happened about 10 years back in the US? If you look at 1099s and the W2 hourlies, and Mehul knows about this, everybody knows from the US staffing background, this is going to be taking a different shape in India as well. Everybody would be available in the mid to a senior level for hourly, daily rates as well. So that there is going to be a lot of transformation happening. And there is nothing called bridging the skill gap. It has to be killing the skill gap. You have to, as the corporates sitting here, CIOs and CEOs, need to understand that the industry partnerships that we're going to be talking about, and I'll throw open the questions to everybody now, and why this is important to actually go as a corporate and as an academia to change their rules and perspectives, what they've never done so far. So might be Infosys is working out of a campus of some college one day, and the campus has to be geared up for that, and people have to be geared up for changing roles and changing dimensions as a consultant. Mid-level person will not have a team in the future. Would they have a team in the future? I don't think so, because there's going to be a lot of pressure on the mid-managers as well. So let me start off with our first question, and everybody has gone through the introduction of the panelists here. So I'll throw open the first question to the panelists. Do the technologies in demand have a ready-to-hire pool? So we start with Neha here, and then we go one by one to ask you about your perspectives and experience in the ready-to-hire pool.
First of all, good afternoon. I'll just step back and say that as a human species, that too Homo sapiens, we have seen that revolution happening, starting from cognitive evolution, then going for the agriculture revolution, then industry revolution. These are 4 steps. I think now we are talking about industry 4.0. Last 20 years we are talking about it. I think whatever technology we are talking about today, it existed before. But the change, what has happened is that it has become relevant. It has become, need of an hour. It has become like a stepping stone for the next leap. So when we talk about staffing, I'll say that as I mentioned, that as a human beings, we are ready for change because we have been changing our skills over the period of time. And as Charles Darwin has said that change is the only constant, and without that we can't progress further, and the people who are not ready to change will perish. So keeping this context, as a manufacturing, I come from a manufacturing background, so I'll set a context how we are, having a skill gap, or how we are looking at the industry, IT specifically, from a staffing perspective. So if you look at BSFI and other supply chain, I think it's pretty easy to implement because many have done it. But when you go back to core manufacturing, when we talk about boilers, melting, refining, processing, or the mines automation and all these things, we find a gap wherein translating the strategic business imperatives into high impact technology outcome. So there is a gap because technology is there, but then how to put it in the action to get those ROIs met, because ROI is extremely important for any industry. Without having ROI, some bit of ROI, you can't just position your projects. So we feel that gap there. Now you know that we have brought in the IT-OT interface because we have been doing a cybersecurity reviews, the VAPTs, and then all big fours engaging for the IT as well as OT part. So when you talk about bringing a man-machine is already a machine-to-machine interface, there is a cybersecurity comes into play. And we are finding a gap there who can make us, ensure us that it's a secured solution in all the perspectives. So I will put it in a nutshell that there is a gap, but then I think as a human beings, we know there is a gap and we are working towards it. In last 2 years, I've seen that a lot of industries, be it service provider, have put in their efforts because they see that value is there. If you don't employ yourself into manufacturing setup and making that manufacturing manifold into, the outcome-based approach, it is difficult to survive.
Excellent.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. So I think this is a great perspective from a manufacturing side, IT in manufacturing, right? Thank you, Neha. Ananth, what are your thoughts about the IT services, from the IT services background? And
skills available, readily available, is it?
They are available.
Okay, let me quickly do a quick survey. How many of you in the room from the companies you are hiring? If you can raise a hand quickly. Are you currently hiring people? Raise a hand. Can't see properly. Raise it fully, please.
So about 30%.
30%. How many of you think that your skills are ready available when you are hiring? Just 30% people lifted their hands.
We have
Zero.
Available for
Zero.
the skill sets in demand.
I think that answers. I think, irrespective of the context, I think never the skills are available in the market. Even if you go back, way back, I think when the big boom happened, 1999, Y2K came in there. I think the skills were not available. I think the industry is traditionally has been taking people, have been skilling them and upskilling them there. So my perspective is that the skilling, upskilling is nothing new. It's been existing. But the context we need to put it differently, saying that so far the IT industry in particularly has seen in a growth market, and it was a non-issue. The companies were ready to invest a lot in skilling and upskilling people. Rather, it became the organization's problem or a challenge or the issue to go and skill the people there. In the current context, I think the whole thing, central gravity shifting to the individual practitioners. They need to skill themselves to be there because no longer we have the luxury of organizations spending thousands or millions of dollars in skilling there. Well, they understand, but mass type of skilling there. So a lot of onus is going to the individuals. I think that's the context we need to set. And second thing is that there's a big difference in the skill requirement, as we all seen there, because we talk traditionally about the what we call as the T skills. So some broad knowledge in a lot of areas and deep expertise in specific areas. I think Harvard coined it way back in 2001. It was there for almost 10, 15 years. Then we moved to what we call as a PI skill, where we said that we added a domain knowledge also. Now what we are talking about is what people call as a comb skill, because the way technology is changing there, I mean, you need to keep on adding to your skills there. You can't be single dimensional, unidimensional, or you have to be multidimensional. Forces you to do this thing here. So it's all about how do we really get people who have the aptitude to multidimension themselves.
Excellent. This is a great perspective, from T to pi to comb. Wow. So I think this is the way that all the candidates, when you interview and you hire, you need to give this perspective from T to pi to comb, and also to students who are in engineering colleges. You know, I keep on saying this the same thing to the engineering students. And it's no longer you have luxuries of 4 years of engineering anymore. You should be ready in the 2nd to 3rd year to get a job, because the 0 to 2 years would not be required what we do today in legacy skills, right? So Vardha, Infosys, what's your take on the same thing?
Hi, good morning. Good morning. Yeah, so I'm from the other side. So I facilitate people, Infosys, to deliver its services to the end clients by providing people. That's all I do, right? Just bodies, as far as I'm concerned. But at the end of the day, the way the whole talent landscape has changed over the years, from an Infosys perspective, when I look at a requirement that's coming in on a quarterly basis or even a monthly basis, what used to be, let's say, 20% of requirements getting into the so-called niche areas, that's transformed into about 70, 72%. And the project longevity, especially when I look at the US market, for example, a lot of those new skills which are in the areas of MuleSoft and RPA, Pega, BPM, you name it, right? They're all very short project durations. They're all projects of very short durations. And as an organization, when we have to get into hiring people for those short project durations, it becomes very challenging, because you are in a situation where you bring in people for those small projects, but you're not able to have them transfer or translocate to some other location to handle another project. And those are added dimensions that come about when it's a US staffing piece. The same thing happens in India as well, right? We find it difficult, especially when we have to staff or when we have to do full-time recruiting for some of these niche skills. The price points go up. The candidates become a lot more choosy and picky about where they want to be, where they want to join. People don't want to come to Electronic City because they're, just because they're staying in Bellandur or Whitefield. They would much rather work in Bellandur, right? Or EcoSpace and just get back. The commute is just not doable. So in all of this, what's really translating this into, what all of this is translating into is that the prevalence or the pressing need for getting in more and more contingent staff into the system, that seems to be a writing on the wall, which has been there for a few years. But like Mehul and Ritu and all these people spoke about, I think it's just going to be going up a lot more. I was recently in a conference in the US, and the new thing that's come up out there is a lot about gig economy. It's no longer about even having subcons or contingent staff being in a project for, let's say, 6 months or a year. It's about individuals, the 1099s equivalent in India, who are going to be working on maybe a day or 1 week or 2 month assignment, making their money, moving into something else. So this is a trend that I'm seeing at least very clearly coming up in India in a big way. It is just that there are still those social stigmas that are associated with somebody who's a subcon vis-a-vis a full-time employee. There is a perception still in the market, when I look at it, when we speak to candidates, that it's not the best candidates who are there in the contingent staffing industry. And that's a perception that we have to change as well. And through whatever activities that you can provide to train those people and so on and so forth, right? It's a perceptive change that we have to bring about. But when I look at it from an Infosys perspective, given the changes that are happening in the market, given the fact that these, like I said, the projects are becoming shorter and shorter in durations, you also have a steady pipeline of people over the years who are becoming, 7 years, 8 years, 9, 10, 11 years in the organization. They end up becoming elephants, white elephants, many a times, right? So the organization also tries to figure out what to do with those people. We don't want to let go of those people because they have a certain knowledge that they've carried over the years about our value systems, the way we work, the client centricity, project deliverables, the process, and so on and so forth. The idea is all about reskilling and upskilling at that point of time. And the upskilling and reskilling need not necessarily be for people who are, the white elephants, but it can be transcending right from people who are 1 year into the system to all the way up to maybe 10, 12 years as well. The people who are beyond from what we've seen, a lot of people who churn out of organizations with 12, 13 years of experience, and many of them, it's a good thing. I think it's a good thing that they are getting into starting things on their own, right? I've seen a lot of Infosys getting into the market to start off contingent staffing agencies, or they're getting into new products. Some of these are very good, but at the end of the day, as far as employees are concerned, reskilling and upskilling will become the mainstay for organizations for several years going ahead as well, given the changes that are happening in the technology landscape.
Great. So I think that's great perspective. Shiv, what's your take on this? Do you get the ready-to-hire pool?
So I will try to answer this from the perspective of a workforce solution company that we are. A lot of the answers have been covered by the fellow panelists already out here, but let me touch upon a few points. So we talked about, we heard about the forecast of automation happening, replacing workers. That's not happened yet, but we clearly see the reduction of the workforce happening today. The numbers that were getting hired previously and the demands are becoming lesser. And there are a couple of points. What is the account for that? Is, of course, the evolving technologies, the changing nature of skill sets, which is becoming more, combination and hybrid in nature, and the requirement for the industry of trying to have one person deliver more, rather than having everybody delivering one particular skill set. So what has that affected? I would say that the job market has changed considerably, depending on these technology factors and outsourcing impacts. So the in-demand skills that we see from our customers that come in have become more combination in nature, and that is what is resulting in this skill gap we all see and talk about. And some of these technologies have just started emerging a couple of years back, and we see that to be more pronounced in those areas. And that's where we are all struggling. We, as an outsourcing organization, also face this real challenge on a daily basis to bridge the gap between the skill sets in demand and actually the available resources. I mean, obviously, when we face that challenge, I assume that is a real challenge which is available on the ground today. So, Manpreet, you talked about the minuscule percentage of engineers who are actually coming into the employment field ready to be hired, and that's a real challenge. So what do we need to do on that? I think we need to look at holistically at a system which has not kept pace with the change, the education system. But what Varda said, that's key, and we see that that the industry is taking upon itself to create a pool of its own, a talent pool which is adequate in skill, competence, and technology to be able to overcome this skill gap. And we are seeing that to be a very, very important aspect in every major IT organization today. At the end, I would say that the impact of technology is going to be ever-changing on corporates. It's going to happen. Pace of disruption is going to accelerate. And I think it remains for the industry, the individual, and the organization to join hands together to continue the success of the IT industry. And that is where I think we will all be successful.
Great. So I think this is great perspective from you. Going to very important question, and which so many managers out here in this room would have reluctance to. Whether somebody comes and tells you have 12 years of experience, would you like to get trained again in some new technology? The answer, if you look at in India and one of the survey, I think I'm okay with legacy skills. I'll find another job, But that's going to be a big problem in the future. So what do we do about it? In ManpowerGroup, where I come from, they call it learnability. And absolutely everybody in this room has to, come up to that learning curve. You cannot say that I am 30 years experience, 25 years experience. I don't need the learnability curve. People will only hire if you have a high learnability quotient. As employers, one of the biggest things that you're going to be looking at candidates now is going to be learnability quotient. Are you ready for change? Can you adopt and adapt to the new environments every second month, third month? That's the most important thing. So is it time to go back to school? And from every perspective here, are we doing something about it in your own organizations? That's the point of view that we would like to know. Are you really training your people? Are you really thinking about it to upskill people, or you want to? Is your demand changing? Are you when you put in the perspective of hiring new people, what do? Neha?
Yeah, when you said that some of the people don't believe in the change, but then I myself look at the changes what I have underwent, because it is like both upscaling and reskilling. Because when we change the technology from the, I think, .NET or FoxPro to SAP or anything, so we have reskilled ourselves to meet the demand of it. And at the same time, the position came as a leading IT, the skill which is required for that, the leadership position. So we have upskilled. I think one and the other way we have been doing it, but we are reluctant to accept it because I think some egos or whatever is coming in our way, it looks like. Otherwise, you will not be growing. That's for sure.
So do you invest in training people?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, that when we hire a people, generally in Vedanta, we hire the GETs, like, the fresh graduates from the organization. Now we have started hiring the talented pool of resources from outside also, because there was some perspective required from the outside industry. So we started hiring the leadership position from outside. But traditionally in Vedanta, we hire the graduate engineers. So the reason being that because new blood coming in will infuse some of the new thought processes which brings in, and vibration it creates in the energy it gives in the industry, it is totally different because they are very energetic, they will bring a new perspective. That's one. And in our case, I think we always believed in training the people on the floor. So we don't have a training academy kind of thing, but then we put them onto the floor and say that please learn.
On the job. On
the job training. It's a tradition, and then we give other trainings. But then second part is the attitude. When we have those, you might not be hearing before, but then now we are doing a psychometry to understand the ability of the person, whether attitude of the person, and then you have value chain in the industry, whether he's fitment to our organization or not. That all those things are being talked about, and we practice it. So it's a continual process again.
Great.
And one more thing what we do is that we keep changing. Rotation process is there in our organization. The manufacturing person who has worked for 5 years, he can't continue working there. He'll be changing the roles in the different stream altogether. He may go into the supply chain, he may go into the marketing, because the person who does not know how the production process happens, he can't be a good marketing manager. So we do that as well.
Role change.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, great. Thank you. Anand?
I know all this is a serious topic, but I hate serious discussions. So let me share a quick story.
Yes.
Which one of my friend in another forum shared from Wipro. So he said that he likes to take his wife when he goes for a drive. Likes to take her also with him, not because he loves to take a drive with the wife there. He shared because the reason is that she had a very important skill. So particularly in Bangalore, whenever he needs to park the car, she's the one who used to help him to really to reverse and then and park the car there. His kids were not bothered to help him, and they didn't have the skill as well. So what he said is that with the new car which he purchased recently with a rear view camera, totally she became redundant. The whole job of trying to help him to park the car went off. So can you imagine saying that a rear view camera can disrupt your family? Okay, that's a reality. Okay, why I'm saying this is that just to try take the perspective back there. If you think the drivers of the car are the organization and we have the suppose of the employees, we no longer let them go. But they suddenly they were having relevant skills yesterday. Today they're not having. Suddenly we are finding them redundant.
Yes.
So that's a huge challenge every organization is facing. And then so coming to back to school or not is that. Let me share the actual experience saying that in IBM, for example, I think it was made mandatory on Agile development training to be attended by every leadership, including the IBM India chairman. So I attended a full day training on the Agile development, because if you really split the whole the management structure into 3 parts, is that the entry level academy, the mid-management and the leadership. My biggest worry is that we talk a lot about the academy, the mid-management are the leaders in all organizations skilled enough to manage the type of millennials coming in there, to manage projects, the new technologies, the big question mark. I think there's a big need or to really skill or reskill the top leadership managers to really for the companies to move forward. I think that's where I think we need to really look at a lot of organizations looking at various things or tying up with a lot of academia. They're doing a lot of forced. I think even IBM started sending people to Harvard for a 1 week training course, compulsory, mandatory, just to make people to reorient to the current technology.
Excellent.
On the mid-management level, that's where I think whatever story I said of husband-wife comes into play. Huge, huge problem because 60-70% of the population are there in that. I mean, being the bell curve, we can leave over people, smart people who are ready to easily upskill or whatever you called about the learnability quotient. Bottom skill also we can forget, but the mid 80% of the people or 70% of people, we have a huge, huge challenge. I think, to be honest, we have not cracked it yet because we just send them back to school or we do on-the-job training, I mean, etc. there. But last perspective, I'll just shut my mouth after that is an interesting perspective came up in another forum. We have a forum called Next Gen where we have cross-industry team there. So one of the important point came up is really we need to look at the engineering, we call it as a profession, okay? It's very funny, we call it as a profession. If you look at doctors, lawyers, even chartered accountants, everything, after they finish their degree, they have a 1 year or 2 year of internship or hands-on job, this thing there. Engineering is the only profession where even before they complete the course, they have a job offer and then they say they are IT professionals. They're not even completed it. I think its time has come to really look at, is this the right thing approach in academia? I'm not talking about the branch, etc. there. We need to really look at saying that, are they guys in the current market and technology, are they geared enough when they pass out of the thing? My view is that no, because making them do 6 months or 1 year of internship or hands-on job journey, bringing in a totally different perspective. I think we need to look at some very disruptive models in our whole supply chain if we can use it. Unless otherwise, I don't think we can manage these things with the traditional methods of training here and there. We will not solve the problem.
I totally agree with you. Right.
So yeah, so I'll take on the serious part of the conversation.
School in the campus, so you know.
I'll carry on the serious part of the conversation.
Yes. Infosys runs the biggest school.
Because we've been serious into training, and I think as an organization, our foundation has been built on our capability to train people, right? So we do training across different levels. Most important being the fresher entry-level training program that we have been known for several years globally. Based on the changes that we've seen recently, what we've done also is that in order to react to it, the same point that Ananth was talking about, are these freshers really geared up to take on the job even before they've graduated, in that sense, right? So we've tried to leverage their education by getting those people to spend their final semester with us. So the people that we extend offers to on campus, we tell them to come over to Infosys Mysore, spend their entire final semester with us, and during which time they get grilled. So it's a lot of unlearning that they go through in the beginning, and then there is training that happens on maybe two different technologies. They go through assessments and so on and so forth, and over and above that, they also undertake an industry standard project work as well. So the idea is to see how we can hone their skills. That is about shaping their capabilities and skills. That's just one of those. But more about people who are in the system as full-time employees, how are we able to undertake a reskilling or an upskilling capability or endeavor? I'll give a few examples. The gentleman from EY very rightfully mentioned during the earlier session that the world has moved a lot towards UI, UX, very materialistic in nature, but then at the end of the day, you look at it, I think people are want to have an experience and rather than owning something with them, right? The very reason why an Apple has been so popular and they continue to rule the roost. So you look at a UI or a UX, you don't find those people ready-made in the market. You can go to a few schools like an NID and places, but you get very few people to be hired from there. Because those people have their own different plans and so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, as an organization, what we end up doing is we have Java resources, J2E resources, for example. We make them go through a complete training program of a 6-week or a 5-week training program on UI and UX. And they are then made to work on some of these, very, very critical clients as far as Infosys is concerned. We've done Pega, for example, J2E to Pega, .NET to MVC, because the cloud is really big, MS Dynamics, and so on and so forth now, right? So to that extent, I guess companies are doing that in a small way at this point of time. Some of these are still at the pilot stages for us. We've just about finished a Pega training. We've finished the MVC training, RPA, and so on and so forth, but in small numbers. The idea is how can we scale this up to a large number, because the demands are very high out there in the market. And our ability to hire people who are full-time resources with experience of 7, 8, 10 years experience is going to go way out of the, our ballpark when it comes to a compensation figure itself. That's going to upset the overall compensation philosophy of Infosys, and that's something we are not comfortable with. I would much rather have our own people retrained on some of these skills and put forth in front of the clients as well. We've been quite successful in that at this point of time. Small numbers, but this has to expand very, very heavily. And I think that's the way for the industry to move forward as well.
Great, thank you. So preponement of probation as a takeaway. If you do that, you have low-cost, sustainable employment via campuses is a way to go for employers here. So Shiv, last comment from you, and we can, I think, open the floor for discussion.
Time to go back to school? I think yes, for many of the perspectives, right? Technology change is irreversible, and it's going to continue out there. And currently that we are seeing, the market paradigm is shifting, the nature of hiring is shifting, the skill sets requirement is shifting, and currently whatever we have on the ground, the skill sets, they have to necessarily reskill and upskill themselves to be there. We heard what Varda said and Anand said. So that is what, at least in our workforce solutions, everyday opportunities that we see that happening, right? And the onus, and I think the way it is happening is it's a collaboration working between the individual, industry, and the institution. There are a lot of proactive, actions happening from individuals, people who understand that need and the trend, and they are actually trying to upgrade themselves proactively. And we see really that it's a lot of actions happening on that side. We are seeing some of the curriculums getting introduced by the institutions which are industry ready, some of those third semester, fourth semester ones, etc. But the onus is again on the industry, and I think that is where industry is spending heavily to create that talent pool through that training COE, hire, train, deploy, or be whatever it is. But the good part is that the problem is understood, and people are trying to proactively work towards that to make it successful. Long steps to go, and I think the bigger challenge remains to the IT industry is how to re-engineer that 3.9 million workforce which is currently on the ground to be able to meet the demands of that ever-changing marketplace and the very changing demands of the global clientele. How they approach the business, what they demand is very different than what they were used to do 1 year before. In fact, I was speaking to one of my fellow panelists just beforehand outside, and she was explaining about a concept that why don't we bring in the dual ownership between the service provider and the organization, same as a PPP kind of a concept. So people will try to innovate, things will change, and reskilling and re-engineering ourselves is the only option left, I guess.
Fantastic. So fourth industrial revolution is already there, is actually there. But I actually will say it's only possible when you have a skills revolution. So this is going to be a skills revolution, not the fourth industrial revolution. It's actually skills. It's from capital to talentism. And that is going to be taking the seat, the driver's seat. As we said, so I'm going to be opening the floor for questions here. And before I start the questions, some of the steps that people expect the government to take, government is just an enabler. The industry has to participate. Industry has to be ready. And they have, and employers have to be encouraged to hire more. And I think, and that's the job of ISF, that we're going to be talking to the government and telling them to pass the benefits to employers. Do not tax it so heavy. Employment services should be not taxed heavily. It should be made, obviously, more, adaptable and also cost-effective for the end user services. Those are the few things that the industry partnerships and our forums are going to be doing. So I'll open it to everybody now. And Mehul, first question.
My question is to Vardha. Hi, I'm Mehul from Collabra. On behalf of the staffing companies, I want to ask this question and take some guidance also. We talk about some of those skills that are not available. We need to upskill and train those people. We're talking about UI, UX, DevOps, big data, data scientists, OpenSpan RPA. Let's say we as staffing companies invest heavily on these training models for these skills, and there is a buyer on the other side. What's your take in terms of the appetite from the buyers to get these skills? Because as staffing companies, and the problem that we face as staffing companies, our margins are shrinking day by day, and it's an open forum. So margins are shrinking day by day. We all are striving to get better margins by doing something innovative. And one of these innovations that I can gather here is probably a model where we can upskill on these skills that we talked about, OpenSpan RPA, UI, UX, etc., right? So what do you, an advice from you for staffing companies sitting out here in this room, do you think that by investing heavily on upskilling the talent on these skills will find a better appetite in the buyer's mind, which would help the staffing companies? And any insight on that, please?
Excellent question.
So Mehul, I think that's a no-brainer, if you ask me, right? It's not that the companies themselves have the ability to retrain people or upskill people in some of these skills. So for example, a Pega. The Pega as an organization themselves are struggling to hire people. They come to Infosys and take our people and go, right? But having said this, the people that we would want to deploy on projects with Pega have to be certified, Pega certified folks, where you have LSA, CSSA kind of certification and stuff. And very few people available in the market, right? And there's a limited talent pool, and more people that go out there to reach out to the same talent pool, the price points go up. So beyond a point, it becomes untenable for organizations as well. And that's where this whole reskilling and upskilling initiatives have also been launched in the organization. And it's not that we are undertaking those reskilling and upskilling ourselves for some of these skills. We have partners like you who are doing that particular initiative for us. So in my view, I guess that's a very good question that you asked, because, and the answer is a straight yes. The demand is really high in the market for all of these skills, especially in the US, if you ask me. India, at least, you have a larger runway. The projects are much longer, for longer term. In the US, the difficulty is the shorter term projects, but then, well, of course, you can, if it's a staffing organization, you're able to move people from location to location as well, unlike a full-time employee. So that gives an added advantage for organizations like yours, Collabra, and every other staffing organization out here, which has a good training capability. And I've been saying this outside in several other forums as well. Those staffing organizations whose strength lies in training will succeed very heavily in the staffing industry itself.
Optimistic. Very good.
Right?
So any
I think
other
you really
questions,
can do
please?
that.
Yes.
Hi, my name is Sumer Khan, and I'm from Collabra. Good afternoon, everyone. Vardha, this question is for you. I think it is pretty much in line with what Mehul asked, right? So what we have seen largely, right, you spoke about project tenures getting shrink down and change in the entire transformation and all of that. But then if you look at it, right, in the US, we've seen that the contingent workforce is looked at a lucrative market. People want to opt for that kind of a job role. Unlike in India, there's a different kind of a perception that people carry in their mindsets because of the pricing points and all of that. Right? So how do we, as primary employers, how do we be that change agent to really bring that difference? Do we need to look at the compensations and remunerations of these flexi staffing people in a different way? Because I think the biggest challenge right now is to really attract these kind of people. And India being, I mean, historically what we've seen is all the people from lower end of the pyramid have been really opting for these kind of a job role. But with this kind of a transformation coming in, I think perception is something that has to be changed. So what will be your thought process?
Good question. So it's a very loaded question if you ask me. There's too many things to be looked into if I have to answer this. But I'll take just a few points. I, as an end customer of a worker who's coming from an organization like yours, I spend almost twice as much on a contingent staff as compared to what I would on a full-time hire. Yeah? many a times, 2.5 times. People with 3 years of experience, Java. If I were to hire a full-time resource, I wouldn't pay more than 4.5, 5 lakhs per annum. Plus, of course, the Infosys brand and blah, 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 what have you, right? If I look at a contingent staff who's coming in, nothing short of 80,000 rupees a month. And that's huge, right? We've had instances where subcons coming in with such high salaries, or maybe even more, right? When you have people with 5 years experience, they come in much more higher salaries. They report to people who are earning probably half of what these guys are doing, these guys are earning. So the problem is not so much about a perception out there. It is all about how much of leeway are you able to build in to give that money, extra money to that particular subcon, to compromise a little bit on your margins as well, and see how much more can you give there. And you build your supply chain as well in a way where you get some of the best people from the market to come on board, right? And that's where your brand name plays makes a big difference. And here again, I think, Collabra, Artech, and, Experis and few people out here, at least these are people that I've interacted with, so pardon me if I'm not taking out the names, and these are people who established themselves over the years in the market. The idea is to go and hire some of the best talent from the market, give the money that they deserve, hold them in the market, and take them forward. You put them to the clients will be willing to pay their extra money. The perception you have to overcome largely by changing the talent mix that you have. What's really being seen in the market is that, I spoke about this in the earlier point, that the perception in the market is that anybody who wants to join a staffing organization is somebody who's not worth it, who's not made it to any of these large IT firms, and hence they've joined the staffing organization. But that's changing. That's definitely changing. It may not be so much at the entry level, but at experienced folks, levels of 4 years, 5 years and above, depending upon the clients with which you work and the kind of projects for which you're going to deploy those people, you will be able to attract more and more better people. Right? So it's a change at your end, which will translate into a change at the kind of people that are going to come in internally as well, into your input. So it's a mix of that. And companies like Infosys and anybody else, any of the other service providers who are large consumers of staffing the contingent staff, we should probably also work a little more closer with you all in not really treating you as a real third party, but work collaboratively with you in trying to share part of the project, for example. Let you run the project. We work on deliverables rather than looking at you as pure play staff org players. So that's a change that's coming up very, very clearly in the market that I've seen. So these are ample opportunities for you all to really tap into.
Fantastic. So questions, please. Yes. Can you pass the mic? And is there one more question to go after this? And we'll wrap up the session.
Hello. Hi, I'm Japan Shah. My one question is regarding contingent staffing. So the MNCs, they have that confidence in outsourcing the entire project to a company who has such kind of skilled employees and getting that project delivered at the site of the people who hire these people. We don't see this confidence in Indian companies giving the project at the client who has the contingent staff. So what's stopping these companies to give this project at the client side? Do they don't have the confidence in things, or what are the issues? Because we see companies in US or Europe, they entirely trust the companies who have a contingent staff and they give the entire project to them, which is very indifferent with Indian companies. So anyone can voluntarily answer this question. Thank you.
So I'll start this. This is a very good question. IT staffing to a SOW, statement of work or outcome-based project, the IT staffing company has to reposition as well as get a structure in place first to deliver programs. Because an IT staffing company has got a talent pool of 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 candidates. They're working on site, but they do not have practices internally. If they have a practice internally and they have the experts being hired and they categorize their SAP talent, for example, together, and you have a practice head, and then you have capabilities of delivering end-to-end outcome-based solutions, then only they can go for SOW opportunities. And that is already happening now. But IT staffing companies have to really invest more in getting these practices in shape. Just like an IT company does. But an IT company, for example, IT services company would say, they are our competition. Tomorrow then you will start competing with them and they will say, no, we don't want to take talent from you. Right? So there are two sides of the coin. So you have to be careful in doing what you can do. You can actually be a partner to a big, large company and obviously make your mark that you are competent enough to hire more talent. So you please stick to that while having some more capabilities of SOW partnerships. Am I right? Or you can just...
I think you're right. There's also a client dimension to it as well, just to add to it. The clients do not want us to further outsource work to work directly with the client, right? So many a times, the clients are looking for MSPs. And when I'm saying MSPs, not in the true sense of the real MSPs that are there as far as staffing is concerned, but they're more on the vendor consolidation as far as technology is concerned. And they would much rather deal with an Infosys than have somebody else work directly with them as well. So they're very, very clear about that. They wouldn't want to work with too many suppliers at their end too, right? Which is where we try and outsource a part of the work to a partner who can deliver to Infosys with SLAs, with outcome, whatever, right? The quality metrics and so on and so forth. That is taken and then it's moved on to the client. Tested and then it's moved.
If I may just add one single
last point and we are closing the session.
But that trend is changing. From your perspective, if you see a lot more companies are becoming open to it. And whatever we have seen from the outsourcing organizations, probably a year back, the amount of project SLA based, those kind of projects which were not coming. Today, many companies are entrusting, but you have to build that trust with the customer. You have to invest in that. You can show that you can deliver, because your bad delivery will actually affect the customer's client out there.
Closing remarks, please, from the panelists.
We have different views.
No, that's okay. You can have different views.
I think, first of all, I don't know what made you conclude saying that in Europe and US, they have a different model as compared to India. I disagree with you on that point itself, because even in US and Europe, predominantly, I think staffing this thing are more of individual contractors. But it's matured to a large extent as compared to India. So I don't agree with your point saying that it's different in US and or Europe and then it's different in India. Point number one. Two is that I think, particularly Indian clients, I think we are underestimating a lot of projects, at least IBM is doing, is that they're doing a lot of transformational work and then cutting edge of technologies. And I think we as a service provider also many times very scared to go and accept a project which is fixed priced. It's a fact there. I mean, I don't know whether I'm allowed to say this or not, but because of so much of variation is there, transformational projects, we are not very clear about the scope, we are not very clear about the end outcome, etc. there. And most of the contracts we are signing, design build particularly, are more of staff augmentation more there because of so much of variation as compared to what we saw maybe 5 years, 6 years back there. I think that's what driving there. I don't see, seeing a trend, it will change there, because unless the technology stabilizes and the thing there, I don't see a change there, because as we speak, as we're doing a project there, I think new technology comes, new tools come in there, and then it's an ever-catching game. And with so much of variation, I think services companies think maybe 10 times before accepting a totally outsourced project. That's my view.
Thank you.
I will not take much of our time. I just want to answer here. First, that when you talk about any IT projects, the governance plays a role. It is not only about IT staffing. There is a project management piece comes in. There is a process piece comes in. So, if staffing organization is ready to take that, we are open for that. Number two, as you rightly mentioned, that any of the IT project will not have a fixed cost, because innovation comes in a play. When you do a project management, that time you come and say that, okay, why can't I do this and why can't I do that? Those things comes in which balloons, the cost also. So how do you manage it? I think it's all about you have to redefine or relook at how do you want to place it for the customer's needs, and I think it can be taken into consideration.
Thank you so much, and we close the session. Thank you all the dignitaries, all my fellow colleagues, partners, and all the people who come in here. It was a wonderful session. Thanks a lot, everybody. Thank you so much.
May I request the panelists to kindly be on the stage for a few more minutes?
Sure.
I know we have run way into the next panel, but we'll try to manage the time with the next panel and the lunch time possibly. May I request Thamaya BN, Kelly Services MD, and South Chapter Chair to kindly be on the stage to felicitate the distinguished guest that we have on the stage right now. May we start with Mr. Manmeet Singh, President Experis, ManpowerGroup.
Thank you so much, Samir. Thank you.
Ms. Neha Kini, Head IT Sterlite Copper Vedanta. Mr. Anantharaman Subramanian, Director R&CM, IBM. Mr. Varadharaj V, AVP Talent Acquisition, Infosys. Mr. Shiv Ghosh, Country Director and SVP, Artech India. A small request for a group photograph.